In the last lesson, we discussed sky atmosphere, skylight, and volumetric cloud, and we also discussed a few settings as well. In today's lesson, we're going to discuss the exponential height fog. Okay, so let's begin. If I move just about there and hide the exponential height fog, you can now see that below this horizon, it is pitch black. We don't have anything whatsoever below this horizon. But if I unhide the exponential height fog, you can now see that we have this very good looking atmosphere below this horizon, and it looks really good. One more thing that exponential height fog does is it also add a little bit of haze, mist, or fog in the scene as well. If I enlarge this window, let me bring this thing down and hide the exponential height fog. You can now see a very clear difference in this chart. Without the exponential height fog, our scene looks pretty dull at the moment. We just don't have that kind of visual depth in the scene. But if I unhide this, you can now see that we have this very realistic looking fog or haze in the scene, which adds a little bit of realistic looking visual depth. Okay, let me now split this window, and I'm gonna now give you a demonstration to show you how this haze adds a little bit of visual depth in the scene. So what I'm gonna do in here is to hide this cover asset, hide this character and this weapon as well. And let me bring this up just about there. I'm gonna now going to add and bring in a 2D plane in the scene. I'm gonna move this thing just about there, move this up on Z-axis, move this on X, and I'm gonna rotate this thing to maybe just about there. Let me scale this down, and I'm gonna move this thing just about there and pull this up on Z-axis. Okay, this is just for demonstration. You don't need to follow along whatever I'm doing right now. So I'm gonna now move my view just about there and create a duplicate copy of this plane and place it just about there. Okay, let me move closer to this plane. I'm gonna move this thing here and scale it up. I'm gonna move this thing up on Z-axis and maybe bring it just about there. Bring this thing down on Z. Yeah, I think it looks good. Now I'm gonna create another duplicate copy, pull this up on Z-axis and move this thing back on Y. I'm gonna press F to focus and move this thing on X, bring this thing up on Z and scale it up to maybe just about there. I'm gonna move this thing up on Z once again and yeah, maybe just about there. Okay, so I'm gonna now go ahead and hide the exponential height fog, and I'm gonna select the camera. Let me enable this camera filter, and I'm gonna select this camera and disable the focus as well. Okay, I'm gonna now go into custom materials, create a duplicate of this material instance. I'm gonna open up this material instance, disable the specular, and I'm gonna increase the roughness to the maximum value. Okay, yeah, I'm gonna change this base color to pitch black. I'm gonna close this one. Let me save everything, and I'm gonna now select these plane assets, these planes that I just created, and place them at different positions. And I'm gonna apply this material on all of them. Okay, so I'm gonna now save everything and enlarge this window. Let me bring this thing down. So right now you can see that we have these three different planes with exactly the same material at different distances from the camera. This one is pretty close to the camera. This plane is pretty close to this asset in here, and this one is pretty close to the background mountains. If I split this window, you can now see that we have these three planes at different locations. One is over here, the other one is over here, and the third one is over here. So what I want you to focus on in this shot is the color of these three planes. These three planes share exactly the same material. You can also see visually that they look exactly the same. But if I go ahead and unhide the exponential height fog, you can now see that the intensity of the black color on this plane looks a little bit different from the others in the background. This one looks pretty black, but this plane in the background doesn't look as much black as this one. And same is the case for this one as well. As far as black color is concerned, it doesn't look as much black as this one, and this one doesn't look as much black as this one, even though we have the same material on all of these planes. But if I hide the exponential height fog, you can now see that as far as visual color is concerned, all of these planes look exactly the same. But if I unhide the exponential height fog, you can now see that this plane doesn't look as much black as this one, and this one doesn't look as much black as this one. So why is that? The reason for that is when you add exponential height fog in your scene, it also adds a little bit of visual depth in the scene, and it somehow reduces the intensity of black color with respect to the distance from the camera. You can see that this one is pretty close to the camera, it looks pretty black, but this one is a little bit further away from the camera, so it doesn't look as much black as this one, and this one is quite at a distance from the camera, so that is why it doesn't look as much black as this one, okay? So this is how exponential height fog adds a little bit of depth into your scene. What happens is the exponential height fog decreases the intensity of the black color of the objects that are distant from the camera. This is how it contributes to add a little bit of visual depth in the scene. It doesn't just brings in this fog or haze in the scene, but it also lowers the intensity of the black color of the distant objects, and that is what gives us or a general viewer an idea that this object is pretty far away from the camera, okay? So this haze or fog in the scene and this reduction of the intensity of black color, both of these elements contribute to give the general viewer an idea that this object is pretty far away from the camera, okay? So this is how exponential height fog actually works. I'm going to now just select these three planes and delete them. And I'm going to now split this window. And let's now discuss a few exponential height fog settings. Let me bring my view just about there, and I'm going to press Ctrl H to unhide everything. I'm going to select exponential height fog, and first up in here we have fog density. Pretty self-explanatory stuff. If I increase the slider, you're going to now see that we have a lot more dense fog in the scene. But if I reset this number back to the default, now we don't have as much density as we had beforehand, okay? For the sake of demonstration, I'm going to bring up the slider. Next up in here, we have the fog height fall off. If I increase this value, you can now see that we can control the height of the fog. Now our fog is pretty constrained to the ground. But if I decrease this value, you can now see that we have you can now see that the fog goes high up in the sky. I'm just going to keep this at default as well. Next up in here, we have fog in scattering color. Pretty self-explanatory. You can control the albedo color of your scattering in here. Or if you're looking for something like this orangish sort of fog in your scene, you can do that as well. But I'm just going to keep this thing at default for now, okay? So next up in here, we have fog opacity. Let me move just about there. And if I bring this thing down, you can see that we can control the opacity for the atmosphere that we have below the horizon. I'm just going to keep this at default as well. Next up in here, we have the start distance. I don't really see any difference right now. And I'm not really sure if the volumetric fog really has an effect on this slider, but I don't really see any difference right now. So I'm just going to keep this thing at default. Next up in here, we have the fog cutoff distance. You can now see if I bring the slider up, we have this sort of cutoff of the fog in here, somewhere around here. You can see this very visible seam line. Let me show you the difference. So I don't really know in what situations you'll like to tweak that, but I'm just going to keep this at default, okay? So next up in here, we have a directional scattering exponent. If I increase this number, you can now see that we have this burst of fog coming in from here. I'm just going to keep this at default as well. You can also, control the start distance if you want, but I'm just going to keep it at default. Perhaps this is the most important setting in here. If I disable volumetric fog, you can now see that we still have this fog in the scene. Let me show you the difference in here. but it doesn't have any sort of visual depth in the scene, and it doesn't really interact with the environment as well. Okay, you can see that it gives us this bluish sort of fog in the scene. But if I check this box, you can now see that not only does fog now have some sort of depth, but it also interacts with the environment as well. Down here we have the scattering distribution. If I, bring this number down, we can control the scattering in here as well. If I bring down this slider, you can see now we no longer have that scattering in here. We can see this bluish sort of fog in here. But if I increase this number, you can see our scattering is pretty high at the moment. And we also no longer have that unrealistic bluish fog in the scene. Okay. I generally like to keep this at default as well. Next up in here, we have albedo. Pretty self-explanatory. You can, adjust the color of your fog to whatever you want. Maybe if you're looking for something like this, perhaps you can do that. But I generally like to keep this at default as well. Next up in here, we have emissive. If you want to, if you want some sort of emission in your fog, you can go ahead and change the material. But generally, I like to keep this thing at default. Okay. Next up in here, we have a extinction scale. If I increase this number, you can see we have this fog pretty close to the camera. But if I bring down this number, you can now see that the fog kind of dies out somewhere around this area. Okay. Let me split this window and show you from here. If I increase this number, you can now see that we have this fog pretty close to the camera. But if I decrease this thing, you can now see that we only have fog around this particular area. Okay. Of course, depending on the shot, you're going to have to adjust this extinction scale. But for now, I think it is fine where it is. Next up in here, we have star distance. If I increase the slider and if I increase this number, you can see that we only have this fog in the background. But if I decrease this number, you can see it has a very soft fall off and we have a little bit of fog closer to the character as well. Okay. Next up in here, we have near field distance. If I increase this view start distance and maybe keep it just about there. And if I now increase this near field distance, I can control the field distance from the start of the fog. Okay. Let me enlarge this window. And if I now, decrease this thing, you can now see that we have this very soft sort of fall off in here. But if I increase this thing, you're going to now see that we have a bigger field distance of this fog from the camera. The difference is pretty minimal at this point, but if you want to tweak that for some reason, you can do that from here. Okay. I'm going to just keep all of these settings at default, and I'm going to also keep the fog density at default as well. Okay. So that's it for this lesson. And in the next lesson, we'll discuss some more lighting parameters. So I'll see you guys in the next one.